Before we dive into today's movie story, I just want to let you know that this is a recap of the film, so there will be spoilers ahead. Our movie today begins with a couple named John and Sarah, who are at the peak of their happiness as they choose the color for their baby's nursery. At night, they go to bed, and John confesses that he's worried about the responsibilities ahead. Sarah reassures him that she loves him and will stand by his side until they live the perfect life they dream of. The next day, they both head to work. Sarah is a mathematics professor working at a university, while John is an interior designer at a major architectural firm. At this point, we see one of John's colleagues at work, named Alyssa, watching him. It's revealed that they were in a relationship in the past, but now John completely ignores her because he loves Sarah. Whenever Alyssa tries to involve him in any project at work, he immediately refuses. Meanwhile, Sarah returns home and plays the piano to calm her nerves. Suddenly, she started feeling pain in her stomach, so she called John. But his phone is off as he's showing a client an apartment he designed. Unfortunately, by the time John finishes work, he went straight to the hospital to check on her, only to be devastated to find out that she has lost the baby. From that point on, their lives become gloomy, and they can no longer bear to stay in their home. They decide to look for a new house. They meet with someone who can help them find a place in a quiet area, but none of the apartments appeal to them. The agent then mentions a man named Emmett, who lives in a beautiful house and might be able to show them the kind of home they're dreaming of. They decide to visit him at his home, which turns out to be an old-fashioned yet stunning masterpiece that immediately captivates them. Emmett warmly welcomes them, and when he notices their admiration for the house, he tells them it was built in 1918, a historic and well-established home. Emmett invites them to stay for dinner to discuss their dream home in more detail. As they talk, he learns their story and realizes they are a harmonious couple looking for a fresh start. It's also clear that Sarah is hiding something. After dinner, Emmett shows them an impressive collection of guns and rifles that workers found in an old shed behind the house years ago, which he decided to display to increase the house's value. Later, they sit and chat over drinks until they feel too tired to leave. Emmett, concerned for their safety, offers them the guest room to stay the night. John and Sarah are delighted to spend the night in a house they dream of owning. The next morning, they wake up and get dressed, ready to leave, but are surprised to find that Emmett is gone. He has left them a note saying that he has always wanted to see a couple as harmonious as they are and help them. To that end, he decided to sign the house over to them for free. However, there's a strange condition. They are never to enter the basement. If they do, ownership of the house will revert to him immediately. John is suspicious, worried Emmett may have left them with some sort of problem. Meanwhile, Sarah finds the woman who introduced them to Emmett waiting for them to finalize the paperwork. Realizing this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, she convinces John to sign the contract and simply ignore the basement, as though it doesn't exist. After signing, their lives transform into a dream. Every moment in the house feels perfect. Once they've moved all their belongings into the house, they decide to throw a party to welcome their friends. During the party, when Elisa arrives to congratulate him while subtly reminding him of their past. Not wanting Sarah to notice, he discreetly steps outside to beg Elisa not to cause trouble between them. While outside, John spots a man standing near the house holding a can of gasoline. As John approaches, the man warns cryptically, "Burn the house down before it destroys your life." Without offering further explanation, the man leaves, leaving John confused and uneasy. The next day, a neighbor meets Sarah and tells her she hopes they'll stay in the house for a long time, hinting at some mysterious past. At the same time, John arrives at work to find Alyssa has filed a harassment complaint against him, accusing him of trying to approach her. He is suspended from work until the company investigates the allegations. Not wanting Sarah to know about his suspension, John continues dressing for work each morning as though nothing is wrong. After Sarah leaves for work, John spends his time exercising before returning home to think about resolving the tension with Alyssa. He considers texting her to arrange a meeting, but changes his mind at the last moment. As he wanders the house, he finds himself standing in front of the basement door, curious to see what lies behind it. He tries to open the door but fails. It's old, stuck, and injures his hand in the process. Frustrated, he waits for Sarah to return home and brings up the topic of the basement again. However, Sarah becomes defensive, reminding him of the condition tied to the house and insisting they must not jeopardize their dream. The next day follows a similar pattern. Sarah leaves for work, John exercises, and then returns home. This time, he finally sends a message to Alyssa, asking to meet and resolve their issues. While waiting for her response, he notices a strange section under the staircase that seems out of place. Intrigued, he goes to the city records office to request the architectural plans of the house, pretending he's there to prepare for renovations at Emmett's request. The staff informs him that Emmett and his family mysteriously disappeared years ago and that the current owner is someone named Paul. Suspicious, John brushes off the remark and returns home with the plans. After studying the blueprints, he confirms there's a hidden door under the stairs leading to a sealed entrance to the basement. Eager to uncover the secret, John removes the flooring and uses a flashlight to peer into the hidden area. But unfortunately, he is surprised by Sarah's return. He closes everything and goes upstairs so that Sarah does not notice anything. The day ends uneventfully, and the couple goes to bed. Late that night, John is awakened by a call from Alyssa, asking him to meet her at the parking garage where they used to meet. Reluctantly, he goes to convince her to leave him alone and let him live his life with Sarah. However, Alyssa becomes furious, insisting she was meant to be in Sarah's place, living the life she dreamed of with John. Determined, she refuses to back down. The following day, Sarah has a day off and decides to spend her time setting up the nursery. Meanwhile, John leaves for his usual workout. Later, Sarah feels an unusual movement in her abdomen, suspecting she might be pregnant. Excited, she rushes to take a pregnancy test, which confirms her suspicion. Overjoyed, she accidentally drops the test kit under the bed while tidying up and discovers the architectural plans John hid there. Realizing he has been secretly investigating the basement, she becomes upset. Determined to confront the mystery herself, Sarah enters the hidden passage under the staircase, unaware that Alyssa has come to the house, consumed with jealousy. Alyssa plans to confess her history with John and destroy their relationship. Fate intervenes as Alyssa leaves the house just seconds before Sarah emerges from the hidden passage under the staircase, unknowingly avoiding a confrontation. At the same time, John is returning home, talking to a friend about resolving his problems. Suddenly, he notices Alyssa driving away from his house. Suspicion and anger flood his mind as he realizes she might have caused more trouble for him and Sarah. That night, when John arrives home, he finds Sarah waiting for him, crying. Fearing the worst, he assumes she's discovered the truth about Alyssa. However, Sarah surprises him by revealing her tears are from joy. She's pregnant. John is elated and embraces her, but Sarah tells him there's something else she needs to confront him about. Expecting her to bring up Alyssa, John braces himself, but instead, she reveals she knows he tried to open the basement, risking their dream house. Sarah pleads with him to let go of his paranoia so they can start fresh with their child. Reluctantly, John agrees, sealing the passage under the staircase completely. The next day, they happily pick out paint colors for the nursery. John's day gets even better when he receives a call from his workplace. He's been cleared of Alyssa's harassment allegations and can return to work. Alyssa, who had filed the complaint, unexpectedly took leave, sending an email confessing that she fabricated the accusations. John is puzzled by her sudden change of heart but relieved. That evening, he returns home to Sarah, and they continue preparing the nursery. However, they discover a bullet lodged in one of the walls, which shocks them both. Furious, John insists they leave the house immediately. He tells Sarah that he learned from the city records that Emmett and his family vanished without a trace, and he suspects Emmett may have killed them and hidden their bodies in the basement. That's why he forbade anyone from entering it. Sarah dismisses John's fears, focusing instead on her pregnancy and not wanting to stress herself. The next day, John returns to work, relieved to be free of police questioning about Alyssa, but learns from his colleagues that Alyssa has been missing for some time. Meanwhile, Sarah spends the day with their neighbor, trying to get to know her better. During their conversation, The neighbor cryptically mentions how she hoped they would stay in the house longer than previous families. When Sarah presses her for details, the neighbor reveals that numerous families have lived in the house over the years, and each time, the residents mysteriously disappeared. This revelation unsettles Sarah, who begins to notice her surroundings with suspicion. Later, while watching TV, Sarah sees a news report about Alyssa's disappearance, which is being covered on multiple channels. She quickly checks her phone and discovers that John had been in contact with Alyssa shortly before her disappearance. That night, Sarah confronts John, who evades her questions, making her even more suspicious. She waits until he goes to the bathroom and checks his phone, finding their last conversation and confirming they had met. Meanwhile, John stays awake all night, examining the bullet he found in the wall. He realizes it matches the type of bullets Emmett had shown them when they first visited the house. This confirms John's belief that Emmett is involved in something sinister. The next morning, John tells Sarah they need to leave the house immediately before the police uncover any crimes and implicate them instead of Emmett. Before he can finish his argument, there's a knock at the door. The police have arrived to question John about Alyssa's disappearance. After learning from John's colleagues that he had a past relationship with Alyssa, the detectives request to speak to him alone. Sarah, concerned, stands behind a wall, eavesdropping as John admits he was indeed involved with Alyssa before marrying Sarah. He explains how Alyssa tried to rekindle their relationship several times, but he rejected her advances. Frustrated, Alyssa filed a complaint at his workplace, which got him suspended for a month. John reveals that the last time he saw Alyssa was the day before her disappearance, when they met at the garage. She refused to drop her complaint and stormed off. After that, he had no contact with her. Soon after, she mysteriously disappeared, and his company cleared his name. The detectives, suspicious of John's motives, note he had a reason to harm Alyssa and ask where he was during the time of her disappearance. Nervously, John says he was at home. Hearing this, Sarah becomes convinced John killed Alyssa. Yet, determined to protect him and keep their family intact, she intervenes, corroborating his story. Without concrete evidence, the detectives leave. Later, John finds Sarah visibly upset. She confronts him, stating she now knows he was with Alyssa on the same day she had a miscarriage. Although she forgives him, saying she wants to protect him for the sake of their unborn child, her trust in him is clearly shaken. That night, John recalls several warnings he had ignored: Emmett's cryptic comments about hidden secrets, the old man who told him to burn the house down, and even Alyssa's remarks during the housewarming party about his curiosity driving him to open the basement. He remembers the name Paul, the house's previous owner, and conducts an online search. The next day, he locates Paul's new residence and decides to visit him. When John meets Paul, he is stunned to discover that Paul is the same man who tried to burn down the house. Paul, far from being insane, explains that his life was destroyed by the house. It began with a seemingly perfect life, but over time, he became uncharacteristically angry and violent, leading to the collapse of his marriage and his decision to leave the house. Paul warns John that the only way to break the house's curse is to void the contract. Back at home, Sarah paints over the bullet hole in the nursery wall, following through on their plans despite her growing unease. That night, John comes home furious, insisting they need to leave the house immediately. He grabs a crowbar and heads to the basement door. Sarah, panicking, strikes him on the head with a metal rod, knocking him unconscious. When John regains consciousness, he finds Sarah sitting beside him. She's visibly shaken and begins to confess a secret she has been hiding. She reveals that the day she discovered he had tried to open the basement, she heard strange movements in the house. Believing it to be an intruder, she armed herself with a gun to confront whoever or whatever it was. At that moment, Sarah reveals that when she entered the room that day, she found Alyssa inside. Alyssa accused Sarah of living a life that rightfully belonged to her, claiming that everything Sarah had was supposed to be hers. Overwhelmed by anger and fear, Sarah snapped. She shot Alyssa twice and strangled her to ensure she was dead. In a panic, Sarah hid Alyssa's body in bags and placed them in the basement. To divert suspicion, she drove Alyssa's car out onto a random street and abandoned it. Sarah also confesses that she sent an email from Alyssa's phone to the company, retracting the harassment complaint against John, before destroying the phone entirely. When she returned home, she convinced John to seal the basement, using the guise of wanting to live peacefully without the temptation of breaking Emmett's mysterious rule. Horrified by the confession, John considers reporting her to the police. However, Sarah threatens him, claiming she has left enough evidence to incriminate him if she is caught. She warns that she could tell the police she found Alyssa's body in the basement, framing John as the murderer, while she walks away free. With no choice and desperate to protect their unborn child, John reluctantly agrees to move on and pretend none of it happened. In the film's final moments, the couple hosts a party to celebrate the arrival of their baby. During the celebration, they receive a mysterious package from Emmett. Inside is the key to the basement, accompanied by a cryptic note congratulating them for holding on to the opportunity and surviving the house without destroying each other. The film ends on an unsettling note, leaving viewers questioning the true nature of the house and whether John and Sarah can ever escape its dark influence. That's the end of today's movie recap. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more summaries. See you in the next one.